Yeah, welcome back to my channel. As you can see from the title, um, I'm going to do some explaining. I think I've covered this in some of my other videos, but I think that this one will kind of bring things together. The title, of course, of my video is Why I Am Not an Atheist, and that's reminiscent of Bertrand Russell's book, Why I Am Not a Christian. And maybe that's a good place to start. I read Bertrand Russell's book a long, long time ago, and I was intrigued. There was actually a subsequent book that was interesting, that was titled "Why Bertrand Russell is Not a Christian." But let me address Bertrand Russell first. He at some point was a believer, and then he lost his faith, and he wrote the book "Why I'm Not a Christian." And in the book, he detailed various reasons why. Some of them philosophical, some of them from his experience, and I think that in the end, what I took away from the book was that it didn't ring true to him because of all the inconsistencies, and there are certain things that he could not reconcile. And I remember one of them in particular that was interesting. That was he said that, which he was wrong on, by the way, but he said that if a woman was in the Catholic Church, if a woman um, had a husband who has syphilis, she would not be able to divorce him. She would have to be with him, and she would have to have sex with him, and that was unacceptable to him. And now there were some times when the church was very strict about marriages, but it was really a it varied from priest to priest. The teaching was always that you don't have to stay with him. You can leave. Um, he lied to you. I mean, there are reasons why. I mean, you're not supposed to. You don't have to stay with him. At least that's what the church in general taught. Like I said, there may have been a priest here and there that would have advised her differently, but priests don't always give you the right advice, or they're not always right on the teachings of the church. Surprisingly, I found that to be sometimes the case. Most of the time it's not, but sometimes that's the case. Also, there were things he didn't like about various Christian denominations, and he brought them up as if it was all one Christian belief, and that just wasn't true. There are some Christian denominations that I have very little in common with. I would say particularly like the fundamentalists. The fundamentalists give their name from, I think it's five things that they will not be swayed on. They will not inerrancy of the Bible, the virgin birth, the Trinity, and I can't remember the others, but those are the fundamentals, and they will never salvation through faith alone. Um, those are the things that they will not sway from. Also, there's a group of Christians that only rely on the King James version of the Bible. There are varieties. There are 23,000 denominations, and there may be more now. That number was from like 20 years ago. Um, and so there are various different Christian denominations, and they have different beliefs. And some of them are loathsome, some of them are awful. But this is, I am a Catholic, and I'm pretty well versed in my faith and the teachings of the church. And the background that I have has been in reading, the great thinkers, Augustine and Aquinas and Thomas à Kempis and John Paul II, um, John Henry, was it Cardinal Newman, um, Teresa of Avila, the Duchess of the Church. And there's a very coherent argument that they make. But let's start somewhere else. Let's start with the title of my video, "Why I Am Not an Atheist." And just as a challenge, atheists, a lot of you wrote down in the comments, right? There's a lot of debate within you guys also. I mean, there's like the positive atheist, negative atheist. There are different ways of approaching it. There are some that just say, "Well, I do not believe in God," and they are not talking about lack of belief. I mean, I know that the thought is there. I know that there's a very and there's a subtle difference, and a lot of you like that definition. I understand that, but not all atheists think the same way as you do. Some of them think differently. There's also, like I said, there's something called wishy-washy atheists, which is interesting. And so, why am I not an atheist? And there are all the arguments, you know, I can't remember the names of them, but the argument of what is it? Let's start with one. The fine tuning argument, right? That the universe is like one big machine and it's like a fine tuned watch, and then there's the arguments of philosophy, the reason and belief in God and imagining a perfect being, that argument, right? But to me, it's like I said in my previous videos, it's the scientific, I guess it would be the scientific argument, explaining the universe and explaining why things are where they are. That at the beginning of time and space, before there was time and space, there was nothing, and from nothing, not only did it create like a blob of stuff, but it created us people, and we reason, right? And at the very beginning, the explosion happened, and I know that there are arguments, and that's why they went to CERN and they tried to argue for multiple universes. That this has happened many times before. That it's like a rubber band, right? It expands, contracts, and you have all these different um, existences that have come into being, and in one of them, you're bound to have this accident that comes out ends up being us. So, but in this particular universe, you have the Big Bang that happened, and then was it 14 billion years for the universe, and then I think it's 4 billion, right around 4 billion years for the Earth, and all of this happened in sequence and in order, and in the end, like I said, there are like what I would call the four Big Bangs. The original Big Bang, the explosion that created the universe, and then there would have been um, the one that created life, abiogenesis, right, from inorganic matter to organic matter, and then those created, so you got like from a rock to a plant or to a single cell creature. Um, then the uh, churning of the stuff on the planet, and it eventually created proteins that eventually gave rise to the single cell animals, and then those created very complicated creatures, and it created things in us that are just like unbelievable. Our eyes and our ears and the way that we can and then from that we got from animals, we got humans that can reason and that we are aware of ourselves, and we make things, and we create laws and we create societies and cultures, and all of that happened in 14 billion years, and it just happened in the right exact order. And you know, you guys, I mean, write in the comments. I'll read them. I can't explain that in any other way except that it seems like it was created on purpose. And I would attribute that to God. And I'm not even sure what God it is, but a higher being, one that's clearly more than us, designed this and set it in motion. And that's just that's I can't believe that this was all just one incredible accident, that from nothing we got everything. And and the definition of nothing, when it doesn't suit the some people, they change it so that it's not really nothing, it's like a little bit of something. There was nothing, and from nothing came everything. And intellectually, I can't accept that. It just doesn't make sense. So if you want to write in the comments and give me some explanation, but that's a really hard one. The rest of my faith, my Catholic faith, Christianity, that's a challenge. Okay, I remember reading on a bumper sticker, it was a bumper sticker that was very popular that used to say, Jesus is Lord, read the Bible, right? And then someone wrote one that I thought that was very smart that said, Zeus is God, read the Iliad, right? And I know where some of you guys go with this, right? The Bible and the story of Christ seems completely mythological. And then, of course, there's, of course, the cult of Mithra, that and the corn gods in Egypt. I understand all of that. I understand all of that. And since I'm not a fundamentalist, when I read the Bible and I read the stories, I don't see them as history that actually happened. Historically, there's a different way people look at history. Like there's it documents maybe a philosophy that's going through, but that the events that happened the way that they happened, I don't accept that, and I'm not held to accept that. That's a different story. And I made another video on it. Maybe I'll make another one. But the one about believing in God, um, that's where I am. And if you guys can explain this in a way that's reasonable, because arguing that this was, if you will argue that this is all by chance, then you'd also have to argue that we are just chemical reactions, and our reason is simply chemical reactions. So if you're thinking I figured this out, or I came to become an atheist because of my reason, that was an accident too. That was just the gravitational pull was a certain direction, and the microorganisms, the microbes in your body tilted it one way, and boom, you decided in being an atheist. You didn't. Your reason's an illusion, and I don't believe that it is. Um, Something else I was going to mention about um, the challenges of atheists. Um, uh, you got that all of this is by chance, and you would have to argue that this is all then essentially meaningless, or it will only have the meaning that you give it. But I would argue with a very good friend of mine. I used to argue atheism with all the time. If you say, well, I give myself value, I give, if you told me that your car was worth $1 million, well, you can say that, but it's only worth what people are willing to pay for it. So it isn't just up to you. I mean, there's other, something outside has to give it that value. Um, I'm, pretty well versed in the Bible. I've read it several times, and I remember that I think I put a link to another video to Father Xavier Lavagero. He was my theology teacher in high school. Later on, he was a Christian brother. Later became a Dominican priest, and he explains, um, particularly the Book of Genesis as as like poetry, but it's designed to teach you a lesson, and it's designed in such a way that the reach is universal. People at least at the time, when you read things in a certain order, and so it explains certain things, but then it also gives you, we those of us that are believers um, argue that the Bible is that God at some point revealed Himself to us, and when He revealed Himself, He inspired people to write things down, and they came up with these writings. And another argument is that some of these teachings that we have that are Judeo-Christian beliefs are revolutionary. They go sometimes against our free will, or I'm sorry, not our free will, but our instincts. And something that is a big challenge for, I think, a lot of atheists is this. And I'll just answer. I'll just pose this question to you: is murder wrong? And everyone would say, of course, murder is wrong. Taking the life of another innocent human being, right? If you're not tied into the Judeo-Christian belief, and a God, then saying murder is wrong is simply your opinion on it. And I had a friend, like I said, my atheist friend, who used to say, well, having laws and especially murderers, making murder makes it more cohesive society, and so it's better. Well, there were cohesive societies. The Mayans used to do human sacrifices, and the Vikings used to, pillage, and kill. There's cannibalism in Polynesia. A lot of places didn't believe that it was wrong, the murder was wrong, and that stealing was, you took whatever is the brute strength, right? Eventually, they had some laws, but even some of them relied on, the strength of the person that was either taking or the doing the offense or the defense. It depended on their stature in the culture, in the society. Um, if you were to do away with, and I think his name is Douglas Murray. He wrote a book called The Strange Death of Europe, and he's an atheist, but he wants Christianity to survive. And in some of his, he's an atheist, but he sees the value that Western society, which is Christian and Judeo-Christian, um, the value that it has. If you did away with it, you would have we would revert back to not just anarchy, but our basic animalistic tendencies, which would not give us the society that we have. It would be completely different. You can see some of this that's happening sometimes in places where Christianity has started to die out, or it's been weakened somehow, and challenges have come to it, and the results have not been good. You guys, this is a challenge to you. Okay, I've heard many times over how religion has been, a force for evil, and they mentioned the Crusades and the Inquisitions, and a lot of the burning of witches and the ignorance, right? And I would concede some of that, but then I would argue that some of these things happened in a vacuum. They were isolated. That the church, in this case, the Catholic Church, right, led the world out of the destruction of the Roman Empire and what was called pejoratively the Dark Ages, but the Dark Ages weren't dark at all. There was a lot of stuff happening that was very good. Um, and also there were the times, back in those times we didn't have recording machines and cell phones, and survival was very difficult. And so, um, but um, here's the challenge I would have to atheists in societies where atheism was the belief that was um, promoted by the government, and I'm talking about communist societies. The deaths and the destruction have been much worse. I think that there's a book called the Black Book of Communism that claims 100 million deaths in the 20th century because of communism. There was a counter called the Black Book of Capitalism. It was really weak. It was a bunch of essays, and it talked about the slave trade, and it talked about other things. The numbers aren't even close, and the reasoning is not there. Um, on the book Black of Communism, all of those societies, they weren't agnostic, they weren't secular, they were atheists. And we saw the results. And I'll close it at that. Curious to see what you guys say. Please, subscribe if you want to. I would appreciate it if you did, and give me a thumbs up. And please write the comments down. I would be curious to hear. Thank you.